The morning sun cast long shadows across the Afghan desert as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical vest one final time. His SEAL team had been deployed to this remote outpost for 3 weeks now, conducting reconnaissance missions in a region known for its unpredictable dangers. The intelligence reports have been sparse, mentioning scattered insurgent activity and civilian populations caught in the crossfire of an endless conflict. Morrison's team consisted of 6 highly trained operators, each with their own specialty. There was Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez, the explosives expert whose steady hands had saved countless lives. Petty Officer First Class David Chun served as their communications specialist, always ensuring they maintained contact with base. Hospital Corpsman Second Class Sarah Mitchell was their medic, a woman whose reputation for saving lives under impossible circumstances had earned her the respect of every SEAL in the unit. The team was completed by Petty Officers Jake Sullivan, Mike Torres, and Alex Parker, all seasoned combat veterans who had seen their share of difficult missions. The briefing that morning had seemed routine enough. Reports of suspicious activity near a small village approximately 12 miles northeast of their position had prompted command to authorize a reconnaissance patrol. The village, according to their intelligence officer, housed roughly 200 civilians who had been displaced by recent fighting in neighboring provinces. Local tribal leaders had requested assistance with medical supplies and basic security assessments. As the team prepared their gear, Morrison noticed the unusual quiet that had settled over the outpost. Even the Afghan National Army soldiers who shared their base seemed more subdued than usual. The interpreter, a young man named Ahmad who had been working with American forces for nearly 2 years, approached Morrison with a concerned expression. "Commander, the village elders sent word through radio this morning," Ahmad explained in his careful English. "They say there was fighting near their settlement last night. Some people were hurt, but they don't know how many or how badly." Morrison nodded, making a mental note to ensure Mitchell packed extra medical supplies. In this part of Afghanistan, medical emergencies could quickly become life-threatening situations if proper care wasn't available. The nearest military hospital was over an hour away by helicopter, and weather conditions didn't always permit medical evacuations. The patrol departed at 0800 hours, moving in a standard formation across the rocky terrain. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, with jagged mountains rising in the distance and sparse vegetation offering little cover. Morrison had learned to read the subtle signs of danger in this environment. The way birds suddenly stopped singing, the absence of normal human activity, the feeling that unseen eyes were watching their every movement. As they approached the village, the team noticed something immediately wrong. Smoke was still rising from several buildings, and the usual sounds of daily life were completely absent. No children playing, no women washing clothes, no men tending to livestock. The silence was deafening and filled each SEAL with an immediate sense of alertness. Sullivan, who was walking point, raised his fist in the air, signaling the team to halt. Through their tactical communications system, his voice crackled with tension. "Commander, I'm seeing structural damage to multiple buildings. Looks like recent explosive damage, possibly from mortars or rocket-propelled grenades." Morrison moved forward to assess the situation himself. The village showed clear signs of a recent attack. Windows were blown out, walls were pockmarked with bullet holes, and debris littered the narrow streets. But what concerned him most was the complete absence of people. In his experience, even after attacks, some residents usually remained to tend to the wounded or salvage their belongings. Chen's voice came through their communications. "Sir, I'm not picking up any radio chatter in the area. No military frequencies, no civilian communications. It's like the place is completely dead." As the team carefully entered the village perimeter, Rodriguez spotted something that made his blood run cold. "Commander, we've got bodies," he reported grimly. "Looks like civilians, including women and children." The scene that greeted them was one of devastating carnage. The attack had clearly been sudden and overwhelming. Homes were destroyed, personal belongings scattered everywhere, and The evidence suggested that many residents had been caught completely off guard. Morrison felt his jaw clench as he surveyed the destruction. This wasn't just a military engagement. This was a massacre. Mitchell immediately began checking the bodies they encountered, hoping to find any survivors who might need immediate medical attention. Her training had prepared her for gruesome scenes, but the sight of innocent families who had been killed in their own homes affected her deeply. She moved methodically from house to house, checking for any signs of life while the rest of the team secured the area. Torres was examining the damage patterns when he called out urgently. "Movement in the building on the north side. I think someone's still alive in there." The team immediately converged on the location Torres had indicated. It was a small stone house that had suffered significant damage, but was still partially standing. Morrison and Sullivan positioned themselves at the entrance while Rodriguez and Parker covered the rear. Chun maintained their communications link with base, and Mitchell prepared her medical kit for potential casualties. As they carefully entered the damaged structure, they could hear faint sounds coming from what appeared to be a back room. Morrison signaled for the team to proceed with extreme caution. In situations like this, survivors could be traumatized and potentially dangerous, or the sounds could be coming from injured insurgents who had been involved in the attack. The interior of the house showed signs of a desperate struggle. Furniture was overturned, there were bullet holes in the walls, and bloodstains on the floor indicated that people had been seriously injured. Morrison's team moved through the space with practiced precision, checking corners and maintaining security while following the sounds that had initially attracted their attention. When they reached the back room, they discovered what appeared to be a makeshift shelter that had been constructed from overturned furniture and debris. Someone had clearly barricaded themselves inside, probably during the attack. Rodriguez carefully moved some of the debris aside, while Mitchell prepared to provide immediate medical care to whoever they might find. What they discovered inside the shelter changed everything. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, was lying unconscious and badly injured. She was wearing civilian clothes, a traditional Afghan dress that was now torn and bloodstained. Her breathing was shallow, and it was immediately apparent that she had suffered significant trauma. Mitchell quickly moved in to assess the woman's condition. She's got multiple contusions, possible internal injuries, and she's lost a significant amount of blood, she reported to Morrison. But she's alive, and her vital signs are weak but stable. As Mitchell began providing emergency medical care, something about the injured woman caught her attention. Despite her traditional dress and the civilian setting where they had found her, there were subtle details that didn't quite fit the profile of a typical Afghan village woman. Her hands, while dirty and bloodied, showed no signs of the hard manual labor that characterized most women in this region. Her fingernails, though broken and damaged, had clearly been well maintained before the attack. Morrison was coordinating with Chun to arrange for an immediate medical evacuation when Mitchell made a discovery that would change everything. As she was checking the woman's clothing for additional injuries, she felt something unusual sewn into the fabric near the shoulder. Working carefully, she discovered what appeared to be a small, waterproof pouch that had been expertly concealed within the dress. The pouch contained items that made Mitchell's pulse quicken. There was a small GPS device, a miniature communication device unlike anything used by local civilians, and, most significantly, a laminated identification card written in multiple languages, including English and Pashto. The photograph on the identification showed the same woman they had just found, but she was wearing military fatigues, and the identification clearly marked her as an intelligence operative. Mitchell stared at the documents for a long moment, her mind racing as she processed the implications. This woman wasn't a civilian caught in a random attack. She was an undercover operative who had been living in this village, probably gathering intelligence on insurgent activities in the region. The attack that had devastated the village had likely been specifically targeting her, which meant that her cover had been blown and she had become a high-value target. The medic's hands shook slightly as she carefully replaced the documents and continued her medical assessment. The woman's injuries suggested that she had fought desperately to survive, and the fact that she had managed to create a shelter and hide until Morrison's team arrived indicated both training and incredible determination. Morrison noticed Mitchell's change in demeanor immediately. "What is it, Doc? What did you find?" Mitchell looked up at her commander, her face pale with the realization of what they had stumbled into. "Sir, I think we need to talk privately. This situation is much more complicated than we initially thought." As the team maintained security around the damaged house, Morrison and Mitchell stepped outside where they could speak without being overheard. Mitchell quickly explained what she had discovered, showing Morrison the identification and equipment she had found concealed in the woman's clothing. Morrison examined the documents carefully, his expression growing more serious as he understood the implications. "So we're not dealing with a civilian casualty," he said quietly. "We've got an intelligence operative who was working undercover in this village." "That's right, sir," Mitchell confirmed. "And if insurgents discovered her real identity, that would explain why this attack was so brutal and comprehensive. They weren't just attacking a random village. They were trying to eliminate a high-value intelligence asset." The commander's mind was already working through the tactical implications of their discovery. If the woman was an intelligence operative, there were protocols that needed to be followed for her protection and extraction. But there were also serious questions about how her cover had been blown and whether the insurgents who had attacked the village were still in the area. Chen's voice crackled through their communication system, interrupting Morrison's thoughts. "Commander, I've got base on the line. They're asking for a status update on our reconnaissance mission." Morrison looked back at the unconscious woman, then at Mitchell, who was continuing to monitor her condition. "Tell base we've encountered casualties and need immediate medical evacuation," he instructed Chun. "But don't mention anything about what we've found until we can secure communications." As Mitchell worked to stabilize the injured operative, Morrison began to understand that their routine reconnaissance mission had just become something much more significant and potentially dangerous. They had stumbled into a complex intelligence operation, and the unconscious woman in their care held secrets that could be crucial to ongoing military operations in the region. The question now was whether they could get her to safety before the insurgents who had attacked the village realized that their target had survived and was now under the protection of an American SEAL team. The weight of their discovery settled heavily on Morrison's shoulders as he watched Mitchell work to stabilize the unconscious operative. Every minute they remained in the village increased their exposure to potential enemy forces, but moving an injured person without proper medical preparation could prove fatal. The commander found himself facing a tactical dilemma that would have far-reaching consequences regardless of the decision he made. Rodriguez approached Morrison with a concerned expression. "Sir, I've completed a preliminary sweep of the surrounding area. The attack patterns suggest this wasn't random violence. Someone knew exactly which buildings to target and which escape routes to block. This was a planned operation designed to eliminate specific individuals." The explosives expert's assessment confirmed Morrison's growing suspicions. The village hadn't been caught in crossfire between opposing forces. It had been deliberately targeted in what appeared to be a precision strike designed to eliminate the intelligence operative they had just discovered. Sullivan's voice came through their communications from his overwatch position. "Commander, I'm seeing dust clouds on the horizon, approximately 3 miles south of our position. Could be vehicles approaching, but I can't determine if they're friendly or hostile from this distance." Morrison felt his pulse quicken. If insurgent forces were returning to the village to confirm their target's elimination, his team would be caught in an extremely dangerous situation. They were outnumbered in unfamiliar territory and responsible for protecting an unconscious operative whose identity they couldn't reveal over standard communication channels. "Chun, what's our status on that medical evacuation?" Morrison asked urgently. "Sir, base is scrambling a helicopter, but they're estimating at least 45 minutes before arrival due to current weather conditions in the mountains," Chun reported. "They're also asking for more specific information about the nature of the casualties." Morrison realized they needed to buy time while maintaining operational security. Tell them we have one critical casualty requiring immediate evacuation. Female mid-20s, multiple trauma injuries. Don't provide any additional details until the evacuation team arrives. Mitchell looked up from her patient with growing concern. Commander, her condition is deteriorating. She's showing signs of internal bleeding, and without proper surgical intervention, I'm not sure how long I can keep her stable. The medic had done everything possible with the equipment available in the field. She had established in 4-line, administered pain medication, and bandaged the most serious external wounds. But the woman's injuries clearly required hospital-level care that couldn't be provided in their current location. Torres, who had been monitoring their perimeter, suddenly appeared at Morrison's side. Sir, I found something you need to see. There are tracks leading away from the village. Looks like several people left on foot heading northeast toward the mountain passes. Morrison followed Torres to examine the tracks he had discovered. The impressions in the dusty ground told a story that made the commander's blood run cold. Multiple sets of footprints, some wearing military-style boots, had left the village sometime after the attack. The spacing and depth of the tracks suggested that the individuals had been moving quickly, possibly pursuing someone who had escaped the initial assault. How many people are we talking about? Morrison asked. Based on the track patterns, I'd estimate between 6 and 8 individuals, Torres replied. And, sir, some of these prints are fresh, maybe only a few hours old. Whoever made them might still be in the immediate area. The tactical situation was becoming more complex by the minute. Morrison's team was responsible for protecting an injured intelligence operative while potentially being surrounded by hostile forces who were actively searching for their target. The approaching vehicles Sullivan had spotted could be additional insurgents coming to reinforce the search, or they could be Afghan National Army units responding to reports of the village attack. Parker, who had been conducting a more detailed examination of the damaged buildings, returned with information that added another layer of complexity to their situation. Commander, I found evidence that at least 2 other people survived the initial attack and managed to escape. There are blood trails leading from one of the houses toward the village outskirts, and signs that someone helped evacuate wounded individuals. Morrison processed this new intelligence carefully. If other survivors had escaped, they might be able to provide crucial information about what had happened in the village and who had been responsible for the attack. But it also meant that insurgent forces might still be pursuing those survivors, which could lead them directly back to Morrison's team. Mitchell's voice interrupted his thoughts with urgent concern. Sir, she's regaining consciousness. The team immediately gathered around their patient as the woman's eyes slowly opened. She was clearly disoriented and in significant pain, but her gaze quickly focused on the American soldiers surrounding her. Morrison could see intelligence and alertness in her eyes despite her injuries. The woman tried to speak, but only managed a weak whisper that none of them could understand. Mitchell leaned closer, speaking in a gentle but urgent tone. You're safe now. We're American military, and we're here to help you. Do you understand English? The woman's eyes darted between the faces of Morrison's team members, and Morrison could see her rapidly assessing the situation. Despite her injuries and obvious pain, she was clearly evaluating whether these American soldiers represented safety or additional danger. Ahmad, their interpreter, had accompanied the team to the village and was now kneeling beside the injured woman. He spoke to her softly in Pashto, explaining that she was under the protection of American forces and that medical help was coming. The woman listened carefully to his words, but Morrison noticed that she seemed to understand the English conversations happening around her even before Ahmad translated. When the woman finally spoke, her words were barely audible, but Ahmad's expression immediately changed to one of surprise and concern. He looked up at Morrison with wide eyes. Commander, she says her name is Zara, and she's asking if we found the package. Ahmad translated. She says it's very important that the package reaches American intelligence. Morrison exchanged glances with Mitchell, both of them remembering the concealed equipment they had discovered in the woman's clothing. Ask her about her injuries and how long she's been here, Morrison instructed Ahmad. As Ahmad translated Morrison's questions, Zara began to provide answers that painted a picture of incredible courage and determination. She explained that the village had been attacked just before dawn, and that she had managed to hide in the shelter they had found her in for nearly 6 hours before Morrison's team arrived. She had been gathering intelligence on insurgent supply routes for several months, working undercover as a refugee who had fled fighting in a neighboring province. The woman's story confirmed Morrison's suspicions about the nature of the attack. Insurgent forces had somehow discovered her true identity and had launched a coordinated assault designed to eliminate her and anyone who might have been helping her. The brutal efficiency of the attack suggested that they had received intelligence from a well-placed source. Sullivan's voice crackled through their communications with increasing urgency. "Commander, those vehicles I spotted earlier are definitely heading in our direction. I count 3 trucks, probably carrying between 15 and 20 personnel. They'll reach the village perimeter in approximately 10 minutes. Morrison felt the tactical situation rapidly deteriorating. His 6-person team was about to face a force 3 times their size while protecting a critically injured intelligence operative who couldn't be moved without risking her life. The approaching vehicles could be Afghan National Army units responding to the attack, but they could also be insurgent forces returning to confirm that their target had been eliminated. "Chen, what's our communication status with base?" Morrison asked urgently. "Sir, I got intermittent contact due to atmospheric conditions, but I can't guarantee secure communications for sensitive information," Chen reported. Morrison realized they needed to make some critical decisions immediately. The medical evacuation helicopter was still more than 30 minutes away, and the approaching vehicles would arrive long before air support could reach them. If the vehicles contained hostile forces, his team would need to defend their position while protecting an unconscious operative whose identity couldn't be compromised. Mitchell continued monitoring Zara's condition while listening to the tactical discussions around her. "Commander, she's stable for now, but moving her before the evacuation helicopter arrives could cause serious complications. Her internal injuries are more extensive than I initially thought." The medic's assessment confirmed what Morrison already suspected. They would need to defend their current position rather than attempting to evacuate on foot. The village offered some defensive advantages, with stone buildings that could provide cover and multiple escape routes if the situation became untenable. Torres and Parker began establishing defensive positions around the house where they had found Zara, using the damaged buildings and debris to create overlapping fields of fire. Rodriguez prepared his explosives equipment to create obstacles that might slow down any attacking force. Morrison coordinated their defensive preparations while maintaining communication with both the approaching medical evacuation and their base. Ahmad continued translating for Zura, who was providing increasingly detailed information about the insurgent activities she had been monitoring. Despite her injuries and obvious pain, she seemed determined to share intelligence that might be crucial for ongoing operations in the region. Morrison found himself impressed by her dedication and professionalism under extraordinary circumstances. The woman explained that she had discovered evidence of a major insurgent supply operation that was using the village as a way station for weapons and ammunition being smuggled from Pakistan. The attack on the village had been designed not only to eliminate her, but also to destroy any evidence of their smuggling activities that she might have gathered. As Sullivan continued reporting on the approaching vehicles, Morrison made the difficult decision to prepare for potential combat, while hoping that the arriving force would prove to be friendly. His team had trained extensively for situations exactly like this one, but the presence of the injured operative added complexity that no amount of training could fully prepare them for. "Rodriguez, are those charges ready?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. I've got explosives positioned at 3 different choke points. If we need to slow down an advancing force, I can create significant obstacles without bringing down the entire building structure," Rodriguez confirmed. Morrison nodded, satisfied that his team had done everything possible to prepare for whatever was approaching. The next few minutes would determine whether they were about to engage in combat or be rescued by friendly forces. Either way, they would need to protect Zara and ensure that the intelligence she had gathered reached American command. The sound of vehicle engines was now clearly audible, and Morrison could see dust clouds rising beyond the village outskirts. In a few minutes, they would know whether their mission had just become significantly more complicated or if help had finally arrived. The tension in the damaged house was suffocating as Morrison's team waited for the approaching vehicles to reveal their true nature. Sullivan's voice came through their communications with measured precision, reporting every detail he could observe from his elevated position. "Commander, I can now confirm 3 vehicles, 2 pickup trucks, and what appears to be a military-style transport. The personnel are armed, but I can't determine their affiliation from this distance," Sullivan reported. "They're moving cautiously, which suggests they're either conducting a security sweep or approaching a potentially hostile area." Morrison weighed their options carefully. If the approaching force was friendly, revealing their position too early could result in a tragic misunderstanding. If the force was hostile, waiting too long to take defensive action could prove fatal for his entire team and their injured charge. Zura, despite her weakened condition, had been listening intently to the discussions around her. Through Ahmed's translation, she provided information that chilled Morrison to the bone. She says the insurgents who attacked the village were led by a commander named Khalil Ahmad Nazir. Ahmad translated. She recognizes the sound of the vehicles approaching. They used the same type of trucks that were involved in the original attack. This intelligence changed everything. Morrison now had strong reason to believe that the approaching force was hostile and specifically searching for the operative they were protecting. The strategic implications were staggering. If insurgents captured or killed an American intelligence asset, it would represent a significant victory for their cause and potentially compromise other operations in the region. All positions prepare for potential hostile contact. Morrison ordered through their communications system. Rules of engagement are defensive only until we can confirm hostile intent. Nobody fires unless I give the order or unless you're taking direct fire. Rodriguez positioned himself where he could observe the main approach to their building while maintaining access to his explosive charges. Chun continued attempting to establish secure communication with their base, hoping to provide real-time intelligence about their developing situation. Mitchell remained with Zara, monitoring her medical condition while preparing to provide emergency care for any team members who might be wounded in the coming engagement. Torres and Parker had established overlapping fields of fire from positions that allowed them to cover multiple approaches to the house. Morrison positioned himself where he could coordinate the team's response while maintaining visual contact with Sullivan, who continued providing intelligence from his overwatch position. The first vehicle came into view around a partially collapsed building, moving slowly and deliberately through the village streets. Morrison could see armed figures in the truck bed, their weapons ready, but not immediately threatening. The tactical situation remained ambiguous. The approaching force could still be Afghan National Army units conducting a legitimate security patrol. Sullivan's voice crackled with new information. "Commander, the lead vehicle has stopped approximately 200 meters from your position. Personnel are dismounting and appear to be conducting a systematic search of the damaged buildings." Morrison felt his pulse quicken. The methodical approach suggested that the arriving force was specifically looking for something or someone. If these were insurgents searching for Zara, they would eventually work their way to the building where Morrison's team was located. Ahmad continued translating as Zara provided additional intelligence about the insurgent leader they were likely facing. She says Khalil Ahmad Nazir is known for never leaving witnesses alive, Ahmad whispered. If he's leading this search, he won't stop until he finds proof that his target was eliminated. The tactical mathematics were becoming increasingly unfavorable. Morrison's 6-person team was facing an estimated 15 to 20 opponents who had the advantage of numbers and local knowledge. The SEAL team's advantages lay in their superior training, equipment, and tactical coordination, but those advantages might not be sufficient if they were forced to fight while protecting an injured person. Mitchell looked up from Zara with concern etched on her face. "Commander, her blood pressure is dropping again. I think the stress of the situation is exacerbating her internal injuries. If we get into a firefight, the shock could kill her even if she's not directly wounded." Morrison processed this medical intelligence alongside the tactical situation developing outside their position. Not only did they need to protect Zara from enemy forces, but they also needed to minimize stress and shock that could prove fatal to someone in her condition. Chun suddenly gestured urgently to Morrison. "Sir, I'm picking up radio chatter on insurgent frequencies. It's in Pashto, but I can make out some words. They're definitely searching for someone specific, and they're coordinating their search pattern." This confirmation eliminated any remaining doubt about the nature of the force approaching their position. Morrison now knew with certainty that they were facing hostile insurgents who were actively hunting for the intelligence operative his team was protecting. "Sullivan, what's the search pattern looking like?" Morrison asked through their communications. "Sir, they're working building to building in a grid pattern. At their current rate of progress, they'll reach your building in approximately 8 to 10 minutes, Sullivan reported. "I also have visual confirmation that these are not Afghan National Army uniforms. The personnel are wearing civilian clothes and carrying a mix of weapons that suggests irregular forces." Morrison made the tactical decision that would determine the outcome of the next few critical minutes. "All positions, we are dealing with confirmed hostile forces conducting an active search for our protected person. Prepare for immediate defensive engagement, but maintain fire discipline until I give the order." The team's training took over as each member made final preparations for the coming battle. Rodriguez double-checked his explosive charges and selected his primary weapon. Torres and Parker confirmed their fields of fire and ammunition counts. Chun prepared to coordinate communication with base while maintaining his defensive position. Mitchell ensured that Zara was positioned to receive maximum protection from the stone walls of the building. Zara, despite her injuries, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation developing around her. She spoke urgently to Ahmad, who translated her words with obvious concern. She says there's something important we need to know about Khalil Ahmad Nazir. He has a source inside Afghan National Army communications who provides him with intelligence about American operations. Morrison felt his blood run cold as he processed the implications of this intelligence. If the insurgent leader had access to Afghan National Army communications, he might already know that an American SEAL team was in the village. The tactical situation was potentially even more dangerous than Morrison had initially assessed. "Ahmad, ask her if she knows how recent this intelligence might be," Morrison instructed urgently. After a brief exchange in Pashto, Ahmad provided a translation that confirmed Morrison's worst fears. She says the source provided intelligence within the last 24 hours. Khalil Ahmad Nazir might already know that American Special Operations Forces are conducting operations in this area. This information fundamentally changed the tactical equation. If the insurgent leader knew that American forces were in the village, he would approach the search with the expectation of encountering trained military opposition. The element of surprise that Morrison had been counting on might have already been lost. Sullivan's voice came through their communications with increasing urgency. "Commander, the search teams are accelerating their pace. They're no longer conducting careful building-by-building searches. They're moving more aggressively and appear to be focusing on buildings that could provide concealment for defensive positions." Morrison realized that the insurgents were likely following a predetermined plan based on intelligence about American tactical preferences. Their enemy was not simply conducting a random search. They were specifically looking for the type of defensive position that a SEAL team would establish to protect a high-value asset. "Rodriguez, are you prepared to initiate those charges on my command?" Morrison asked. "Roger, sir. I can create significant obstacles at 3 different approaches to this building. The explosions will also serve as a signal to any friendly forces in the area that were in contact with hostiles, Rodriguez confirmed. Morrison weighed the decision carefully. Initiating explosive charges would definitively announce their position to the insurgent force, but it would also create defensive advantages that might be crucial for their survival. The tactical calculus favored taking proactive measures rather than waiting for the enemy to discover their position. Chen suddenly raised his hand urgently. "Sir, I'm getting communications from base. The medical evacuation helicopter is approximately 15 minutes out, but they're requesting a secure landing zone and confirmation that the area is clear of hostile forces." The timing could not have been worse. Morrison's team needed to hold their position for at least 15 more minutes while facing a superior force that was actively searching for their location. The medical evacuation helicopter would be extremely vulnerable if it attempted to land while ground forces were engaged in active combat. Mitchell looked up from Zara with determination in her eyes. "Commander, whatever happens, we cannot allow them to capture her. The intelligence she's carrying about insurgent supply routes could be crucial for operations throughout this region." Morrison nodded, understanding that Mitchell was reminding him of the broader strategic implications of their situation. This wasn't just about protecting one injured person. It was about safeguarding intelligence that could save American lives and disrupt enemy operations for months to come. The sound of voices speaking in Pashto was now clearly audible from outside their building. Morrison could hear multiple individuals coordinating their search, and their tone suggested increasing urgency and focus. The moment of contact was rapidly approaching, and Morrison knew that the next few minutes would determine whether his team could successfully protect their charge and complete their mission. Sullivan's final warning came through their communications with stark clarity. "Commander, hostile personnel are approaching your building from 2 directions. You have approximately 60 seconds before they reach your perimeter." Morrison took a deep breath and prepared to give the orders that would initiate what could become the most important firefight of his team's military careers. Everything they had trained for, all their experience and expertise, would be tested in the next few critical minutes as they fought to protect an injured intelligence operative whose survival could impact the entire war effort in Afghanistan. Morrison's hand moved to his weapon as Sullivan's countdown reached its critical final moments. The SEAL team had faced impossible odds before, but never while protecting someone whose survival carried such significant strategic implications. Every decision made in the next few minutes would echo throughout the broader conflict in Afghanistan. "Rodriguez, initiate charges on the northern approach in 10 seconds. Morrison ordered quietly through their communication system. "Torres and Parker, prepare to engage targets approaching from the east. Chun, maintain communication with base and the incoming medical evacuation." The explosion that Rodriguez triggered sent debris flying across the northern approach to their building, creating an obstacle that would force any attacking force to find alternative routes. The blast also served as an unmistakable signal that American forces were in contact with hostile elements, which would alert both base command and the approaching helicopter crew. The response from the insurgent force was immediate and coordinated. Morrison could hear shouted commands in Pashto as enemy personnel repositioned to avoid the blocked approach while maintaining their search for the American team's location. The tactical expertise displayed by their opponents confirmed that they were facing experienced fighters rather than untrained militia. Sullivan's voice crackled through their communications with precise target information. "Multiple hostiles moving to flank your position from the southeast. I count at least 6 personnel, all armed with automatic weapons and what appears to be rocket-propelled grenade launchers." The mention of RPGs sent a chill through Morrison's team. In the confined space of the damaged building, a single rocket-propelled grenade could prove catastrophic, especially with Zara's critical injuries making rapid movement impossible. Morrison knew they needed to prevent the insurgents from achieving positions where they could effectively employ their heavy weapons. "Torres, Parker, do you have visual on the southeastern approach?" Morrison asked urgently. "Roger, Commander. We can see movement, but they're using the rubble from damaged buildings as cover, Parker responded. We need them to expose themselves before we can engage effectively. Mitchell had positioned herself to shield Zara while continuing to monitor the injured operative's vital signs. Despite the chaos developing around them, she maintained her medical focus while preparing to treat any team members who might be wounded in the coming engagement. Ahmad crouched beside Zara, continuing to translate as she provided intelligence about the insurgent force they were facing. Even in her weakened condition, she seemed determined to help the American team understand the tactical situation they were confronting. She says Khalil Ahmad Nazir typically uses a three-pronged assault when attacking defended positions, Ahmad whispered urgently. He'll send one group to engage from the front, while two others attempt to flank from both sides. This tactical intelligence proved invaluable as Morrison adjusted his team's defensive positions. Understanding the enemy's preferred tactics allowed him to anticipate their movements and position his operators to counter the expected assault pattern. Shin suddenly looked up from his communications equipment with urgent news. Commander, base reports that Afghan National Army units are en route to our position, but they're still at least 20 minutes out. The medical evacuation helicopter is requesting permission to proceed despite the hostile contact. Morrison faced another critical decision. The helicopter crew was willing to risk landing in a potentially hostile environment, but doing so could result in the loss of the aircraft and crew if insurgent forces were able to engage it with their heavy weapons. However, Zara's condition was continuing to deteriorate, and Mitchell's field medical capabilities were reaching their limits. Negative on the helicopter until we can secure the immediate area, Morrison decided. We cannot risk the evacuation crew until we've eliminated the immediate threat. Rodriguez had been monitoring the insurgent positions while preparing additional explosive charges. Commander, I can see muzzle flashes from at least 3 different positions. They're definitely coordinating their assault, but they haven't committed to a full attack yet. The tactical situation suggested that the insurgents were still attempting to locate the exact position of the American team before launching their coordinated assault. This gave Morrison's team a brief window of opportunity to take proactive measures that might disrupt the enemy's attack plan. Sullivan's Overwatch position provided him with the best view of the developing tactical situation. Commander, I'm seeing the main insurgent force positioning for what appears to be a coordinated assault from multiple directions. I count at least 12 personnel in assault positions, with additional personnel providing overwatch and fire support. The mathematical reality of their situation was becoming increasingly clear. Morrison's 6-person team was facing a force twice their size, operating in terrain that favored the defenders, but with the disadvantage of protecting a critically injured person who could not be moved. Zara struggled to speak, and Ahmad leaned closer to hear her whispered words. His expression changed dramatically as he translated her urgent message. Commander, she says there's a weapons cache hidden in the basement of the building across the street. If the insurgents reach it, they'll have access to heavy machine guns and additional RPG rounds. This intelligence created a new tactical imperative. Morrison realized that preventing insurgent access to additional weapons might be crucial for his team's survival. The building Zara had identified was currently unoccupied, but within the insurgent forces area of operations. Rodriguez, do you think you can reach that building and deny them access to those weapons? Morrison asked. Rodriguez studied the terrain between their position and the target building. It's risky, sir, but I can get there if Torres and Parker can provide covering fire. I can rig the weapons cache to detonate if anyone tries to access it. Morrison weighed the risks carefully. Sending Rodriguez across open ground would expose him to enemy fire, but preventing insurgent access to heavy weapons could significantly improve their chances of survival until friendly forces arrived. Execute the plan, Morrison decided. Torres and Parker provide covering fire for Rodriguez. Sullivan, give us everything you can see from Overwatch. The coordinated movement began with Torres and Parker laying down suppressive fire toward known insurgent positions. Rodriguez moved quickly across the dangerous open ground, using debris and damaged structures as cover while advancing toward the building that contained the weapons cache. The insurgent response was immediate and intense. Automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple positions as enemy forces attempted to prevent Rodriguez from reaching his objective. The volume of fire confirmed that Morrison's team was facing a well-equipped and tactically proficient opponent. Sullivan's voice came through their communications with vital target information. "I've got visual on the insurgent commander, tall individual with distinctive equipment directing operations from a position approximately 300 meters southeast of your location." Morrison processed this intelligence quickly. Eliminating or neutralizing the insurgent commander could disrupt their coordinated assault and potentially cause the remaining fighters to withdraw. However, engaging targets at 300 meters would require precision shooting under combat conditions. Mitchell looked up from Zara with growing concern. "Commander, she's going into shock. Her blood pressure is dropping rapidly, and I'm not sure how much longer I can stabilize her without proper medical equipment." The medical crisis added another layer of urgency to their tactical situation. Morrison knew that even if they successfully repelled the insurgent assault, Zara might not survive long enough for medical evacuation if her condition continued to deteriorate. Rodriguez's voice crackled through their communications as he reached the target building. "I'm in position at the weapons cache. There are definitely heavy weapons here, at least 2 machine guns and multiple RPG rounds. I'm rigging everything to detonate." The successful completion of Rodriguez's mission eliminated one significant threat, but the main insurgent assault was still developing. Morrison could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions as enemy forces continued maneuvering for their coordinated attack. Shin suddenly received an urgent communication for base. "Commander, Afghan National Army units report that they can see smoke and hear explosions from our position. They're requesting permission to advance at maximum speed to provide assistance." Morrison authorized the Afghan National Army units to advance while coordinating with Sullivan to provide them with tactical intelligence about insurgent positions. The arrival of friendly reinforcements could fundamentally change the tactical balance, but they needed to survive the immediate assault before relief forces could reach them. The coordinated insurgent attack began with a barrage of automatic weapons fire from 3 different directions. Morrison's team responded with disciplined defensive fire, using their superior training and equipment to maximize the effectiveness of every shot while conserving ammunition for the extended engagement they expected. Torres scored the first confirmed kill, eliminating an insurgent who had exposed himself while attempting to advance toward their position. Parker followed with precise shots that forced enemy fighters to seek better cover, disrupting their assault timing and coordination. Sullivan engaged targets from his overwatch position, using his elevated view to identify insurgents who thought they were concealed from ground-level observation. His precise fire eliminated 2 additional enemies and forced others to abandon advantageous positions. The battle continued for what seemed like hours, but was actually only minutes, with both sides trading fire while Morrison's team gradually gained the tactical advantage through superior marksmanship and coordination. The insurgent assault began to lose momentum as their casualties mounted and their coordination broke down. Rodriguez rejoined the team after successfully destroying the weapons cache, bringing additional firepower to bear on the remaining insurgent positions. His return allowed Morrison to strengthen their defensive line and maintain suppressive fire on multiple targets simultaneously. The sound of helicopters in the distance signaled that both medical evacuation and reinforcements were finally approaching their position. Morrison coordinated with Chun to establish communications with the incoming aircraft while maintaining defensive fire against the increasingly disorganized insurgent force. When Afghan National Army units finally arrived and engaged the remaining insurgents from their rear, the tactical situation shifted decisively in favor of Morrison's team. The insurgent force, caught between 2 fires and having sustained significant casualties, began a fighting withdrawal toward the mountain passes. As the medical evacuation helicopter landed under the protection of Afghan National Army units, Mitchell prepared Zara for immediate transport to the military hospital. The injured operative had survived the assault, and the intelligence she carried would soon be in the hands of American command. Morrison watched as the helicopter lifted off with Zara safely aboard, knowing that their mission had been successful despite the incredible challenges they had faced. The routine reconnaissance patrol had become a critical intelligence operation that would have lasting implications for the war effort in Afghanistan. In the aftermath of the engagement, Morrison's team learned that Zara's intelligence about insurgent supply routes led to the disruption of multiple weapons smuggling operations and the capture of several high-value targets. Her survival and the successful protection of her intelligence represented a significant victory in the broader conflict. The woman who had been found injured and wordless in a destroyed village had proven to be one of the most valuable intelligence assets in the region, and Morrison's SEAL team had ensured that her sacrifice and dedication would contribute to saving countless American lives in future operations.